1 in 5 Americans suffer from chronic pain. Many are now using CBD for relief.
Activists are hoping pot could be legalized nationwide by the end of 2019.
When you look at premium cannabis, the Illinois House approved legalizing recreational marijuana.
Welcome to The Budding Report, a weekly show centered around all things cannabis. Please join us in welcoming our host, Charles Horton, and his co-host, Melissa Nasits, as they share the latest in cannabis news, conduct interviews with top leaders in the cannabis space, and promote some of the latest in science and innovation. And now to our host, Charles Horton.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Budding Report. We got a great episode for you today, but first, let me welcome my co-hosts. We have Melissa. How are you today, Melissa?
I'm good, Charles. Always good to be here, and I'll tell you, I'd much rather be here in the cool studio than out in that August Dallas heat.
We're supposed to hit 103 today, but for those in Las Vegas, they're probably not feeling sorry for us because I think it was 113 in Las Vegas.
But that's a dry heat.
I've heard that, but when I'm in Vegas, I want to be inside, whether it's dry or wet. Dr. Shaw, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing out there?
Doing fantastic. What's the weather where you're at today?
I think it's in the 80s out here.
Oh, I don't want to hear it from you at all. Hush, hush, hush. Well, again, I said we had a great episode. We have a great episode for you today. We have Melissa Parks with Cooked with Cannabis on Netflix and Chopped. I interviewed her the other day, and before interviewing her, I thought that edibles were brownies or gummies, and come to find out, you can cook everything with cannabis, and we are going on the road, I promise you, and because I'm in Texas and we can't do it here, but we're going to go on the road, and we're going to have Melissa cook up some food for us. Melissa, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. That was my biggest issue with finding out that she was on our show today, was that she wasn't going to be here cooking for us, especially after watching Cooked with Cannabis. I was definitely ready to try some of it. So
absolutely. So, Christian, I hope you're going to be able to be live with us for that one. Otherwise, you're just going to watch the good food that we're eating. We also have Andy Ross and Brett Lafferty, more TV stars of American Rebel, on the show today, and they've taken an existing business and turned it into a profitable venture, helping out the cannabis industry. So it's going to be good to hear from them too. But first, in the news, big stuff in the news right now. We have Biden's position on medical marijuana, which a lot of people think is weak. And then yesterday, we announced the vice presidential pick with Kamala Harris. So first of all, let's talk about the Biden Unity Plan. First of all, we'll do plan strength, steps to address inequities in the U.S. criminal justice system. Cannabis use would be decriminalized. That's wonderful. Past convictions would be expunged. Fantastic. Embrace drug courts, harm reduction, and diversification programs. Encourage states to invest tax revenue from legal marijuana industries to repair damage to communities hit hardest by incarceration. Melissa, how about the weaknesses?
Well, unfortunately, it does fail to address the lack of banking services available to state legal cannabis companies, and I think that's going to be a big one. For many people, these incremental steps bolster a glass half full perspective, keeping a path open for eventual full legalization of cannabis. However, the plan does fall short when it comes to creating a vision for the future. I think that that's one of the things. It is a step in the right direction. However, we need to look at further legalization of cannabis and aid that we can give to people in the industry.
So now we have Kamala Harris as well, that has been chosen as the vice presidential pick. And what does that mean for the cannabis industry as well? She was tough on marijuana in California. She was as the district attorney, then she became the attorney general. Mr. D'Angelo, very famous figure in marijuana, did a tweet early on about that she took the industry's money, and then when the Department of Justice came after the state, she was silent on the matter. So what do you think this means from cannabis? And Cash, if you would move all the guests up on the screen, I'd like to have this as just kind of a roundtable discussion. What do you think about Biden and Kamala as the for the marijuana industry? Melissa, we'll start with you.
So personally, I think that coming from a very liberal state, coming from California, that has sort of beyond been one of the first to go to the adult and recreational use, not the first, but one of the first. I think she kind of recanted. I think originally, with a law enforcement background, she saw it as an illegal substance. Seeing the benefit, seeing how California wanted to move forward, she has embraced it. And I think she understands how it can work. She still takes a very liberal state and is able to still give law and order. So I think there's somewhat of a balance there. I think that it's the right approach. Instead of going with a very open cannabis as far as the U.S. populace, I don't know that they would embrace that entirely. So sort of a baby step approach. I think that that's something that gives us a potential.
How about our guests? What do you think?
I think I'll go from like a chef's perspective. I think I look at these laws and any laws surrounding the cannabis industry as multiple parts. You have to. And for me, I'm going to kind of narrow in on the cannabis side and on the edible side. And on the edible side, I think there's a lot of regulation that still has to happen within companies, within states. And I think with the dosing, with the accuracy of dosing, with testing, I think not only do some of the plans sort of ignore some of the minute, I know we need to look at the big picture, but the minute points are going to be what make up that big picture. And those minute points leave me a bit fearful for what the cannabis industry can look for in the future. I think there needs to be some sort of general guideline. How do you write that? So for every sort of thing, there's a rebuttal. So for me, I've been kind of putting down the way that I am going to look at these laws and what is to come, especially since I've been a part of some of the lawmaking in various states surrounding edibles, dosing, and consuming. I'm still looking for more details as all of this comes in, because it is so new that this is a running mate and these are the collective viewpoints of these two people.
I think we're all looking for some clarity on there. Andy or Brett, what do y'all think?
I'll just speak to the politician side of it. Like all politicians or most politicians, point of view sometimes can change and swing and be altered a little bit. I think the two of them will get together. They'll create their position that they're going to run on about cannabis, and perhaps their past point of views might not necessarily reflect the agenda that they're going to put in front of the American public and come up with. Here's how we feel about it going forward. Here's what we've learned, in the last 5 years, and they're going to create and write their own, their own agenda for how they're going to represent the cannabis industry. And it'll be tailored a lot to what they think they can do to get votes. I mean, that's just the nature of politics. So it'll be interesting to see what they say over the next few months, that their opinion and agenda on cannabis. And then whether or not, if they do get elected to office, whether or not they follow through on that, that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother show. So
that definitely can take up a whole show itself. Dr. Shaw, what do you think?
See.
Well, I tend to have the general view of the federal government that more is never a good thing, less is better. So the less they can be involved in regulating this, the better. If anything, and I know it tends to be counter, intuitive to politicians, especially at that level, to actually try to decentralize their control to the states themselves to make more accurate decisions. So I'm hoping that is the direction it would take. Clearly, we need a central kind of regulation for safety, consistency, purity of product, et cetera. But I think aside from that, we really need to kind of decentralize it and let the local governments really govern themselves.
As a business owner, I've been in industries that are like that, and even though I operate federally, I have to follow each different states. That sure is irritating for an entrepreneur. But I understand what you're saying. I also kind of wonder what other crops in the United States are regulated on a state-by-state basis instead of on a federal basis. But good argument either way. Federal decriminalization certainly important. Brett, how about you?
I think just looking at it, it would be nice if they could come up with a standard that we could follow, and then basically right now, state to state, it's so different. It's hard for us to get our products to fit into each state's regulations. So maybe if there was something that they could get that was somewhat federalized, it'd be nice for us.
I think that definitely is the entrepreneur view, especially if you're trying to operate in different states. Well, it's going to be an interesting couple of months. Looking forward to seeing how it lines up. Hey, maybe the States Act to get passed even before that, and that would be one of Trump's legacies moving on. However it happens, I'm hoping it happens. Well, we're going to move off to a commercial break, but please stay around. Melissa Parks will be up next.
Coming to you after our hike that we finished. Buster exercises 3 miles. Today is a recovery day because he did 8-mile hike over the weekend, broken up into 2. But what I want to share with you is this company here called Simple Changes. I learned about them and I absolutely love the concept. It's wellness, community, and organization. So as you can see here, I love the wrapping. I love purple, and it comes with 3 products. So I've been trying them out. First, it's the hemp oil spray. Then it's the hemp oil dropper and the hemp oil ball. So I'll be trying all of these out. I've been exploring them, exploring the ingredients. I met with the team on Zoom. Really neat product. And I love the fact that they also want to incorporate healthy practices. So they come with a little journal and something about Simple Success Guide. So Simple Changes.
Well, welcome back. So you kind of briefly met her as we talked over the news articles, but it is my pleasure to introduce our guest to the show, Melissa Parks. She is with Chef MJP. She is a classically trained chef, having attended Le Cordon Bleu, as well as Johnson & Wales, degrees in culinary arts, baking, pastry, culinary nutrition, and she is focused on organic and biochemistry, but obviously she's been working with cannabis edibles, so that's why we have her here. She has worked in fine dining, co-managing high-end bakeries, and developing products for General Mills, and has been a private chef and the talent behind the complete line of products out of Vert. So she's expanded her expertise and was recently recognized nationally and provided multiple presentations and publications, including in the New York Times, the World Cannabis Conference, and the Canadian Securities and Exchange, as well as be listed as one of the top cannabis chefs in the United States. She was also featured on a wonderful television program that I just actually watched on Netflix called Cooked with Cannabis. I believe we have a clip that we're going to show of her on the show. So
let's watch it.
Let's watch.
With some cannabis fan leaf and crispy potatoes on top, and then a mustard sour cream infused with my CBD. So you got to be able to work cannabis into your kitchen.
Oh, look at that, boy. I want to do a play on African street food, so I'm going for a little bit of surf and turf. It's going to be a little bit of beef, marinated. It's going to be called chinchinga, then barbecue that. And since we're going a little bit more towards the coastal side also, Western Africa, I want to play on a little bit of my squid.
When we did our first talk in our first interview, I asked you about brownies, and what did you say about brownies, Melissa?
Did we lose her?
Yes.
Oh, there she is.
We lost you, Melissa. Start over. Yeah, disconnect your video, Melissa. Sorry.
Yep, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So.
I'm not hearing it.
No, I can't hear it all.
Video.
So we'll let them go ahead and get reconnected. So, I think we might have gotten her.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Hey. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, you got a bad connection, Melissa. We're going to have you call in if you have your video disconnected.
All right. Well, while we get her called in, I was just going to mention I was able to get the link and watch the entire episode that she did with Cooked with Cannabis. I know you mentioned that you watched through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I watched the whole season on Netflix, and boy, did I get hungry watching that. And it just really, I said this earlier, but it changed my view on edibles. I thought edibles was brownies and gummies, and in this show, they cook everything imaginable. They cook in some cannabis, and it's not just for the psychoactive effect; it's for the taste.
The taste and the CBD, which I thought was really fun. One of the neat things on the program is they talk about the dosage of THC and CBD, and how I think with one was even talking with a salsa and how the CBD worked with the heat of the salsa. So I found it very, very interesting. So I think we might have Melissa coming back.
Am I in?
Yep, can hear you clear now.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'll tell you quickly to answer your first question about the brownies is I refused to make them for so long. I'm a traditionally trained chef, and one of the owners I was working with at the time of a dispensary, or a MIPS kitchen, which is a marijuana-infused product kitchen. And he's like, well, I need a pan of brownies for this customer. And I was like, no. He's like, Melissa? I was like, Chris. And finally, I was like, fine. You give me an unlimited budget and I will make you brownies. So I think the small pan of brownies cost him a little over $100, but it was Valrhona chocolates. I basically made a French pastry form of a brownie infused with these gorgeous sour cherries. And at the end, he's like, and it was also drizzled with this beautiful chocolate on top. And he's like, okay, I get your point. Thank you. We're done with the brownies.
Sound like pretty good brownies. I would definitely partake in that. It was kind of funny going back to, I would say years and years ago. I made my own butter, so that I would cook with that butter that was infused with THC, and that's how we sort of elaborated. I remember using it on toast and sort of playing with it. What I was really interested in seeing was how they did it with salts and some of the other items that you did. So I thought that was really great. But so what made you get into the cannabis industry in the first place, and what keeps you here?
So I got into it because two separate friends of mine had approached me after an organic farm dinner that I put on for a local farm. And one of the girls, who is my near and dear, she had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. My other friend was in a major car accident, had back pain, and she had a terrible lollipop that I can only refer to as maybe Slimer's slime solidified. And they had asked me if I could make them products, and I said no. I mean, I needed to do proper research and development, but saying no to my friends or anybody who's has an ailment or in any way, shape, or form, if I can help them, I would always do that. And I hated the fact that I had said no. So I Googled top edible companies in Colorado. I walked in there with my newly pressed pink chef's coat, and I brought 12 unmedicated products, which you'll hear me say that a lot. Unmedicated just has 0 THC or CBD infused. And I walked in and I was like, I'll work for free. I want to know what you know. I want to help my friends. I did not know that they were hiring a new chef at that time. I fell basically face first into the cannabis industry, trying to help friends. And what keeps me here is knowing that I still help people, and that is my ultimate goal. And my mother being the one that I just helped most recently through her cancer, and she had a very rare form of clear cell carcinoma of the cervix. And I worked very closely with her doctors, and if there's anybody else that I can ever help, I'm always there.
That's so nice of you. In watching your show, I know there was some challenges in doing the show for you. I'd like to hear about that. And I'd also like to find out about what you found to be challenging about working with cannabis and hemp.
Ultimately, my first endeavor into being on stage, on camera, while cooking in a competition setting with the clock basically ticking in every ear. It was beautiful experience. I think there were the challenges that I faced were of my own creation, where I wanted to showcase a very difficult menu. And I most likely now would take out a few components and give myself some more time to process. That I think was, I think in other words, that was my own worst enemy. But I'm so proud of what I did there. And I also showcased a lot of the food from my family. Early on, I think my largest fear was overdosing or underdosing a product. I needed to fully understand what that meant, but not just in a mousse, in a pudding, in a baked form, in a savory form, in an oil or a tincture or an infusion that I do into something people consume. I think that was for me just to wrap my brain around it and know what it would do to each product, and not just the taste of it, because sometimes the taste of it can be overpowering, but I wanted to understand the chemistry of why things were connecting the way they were and not the way that I had expected. So on a mirror, actually, I started writing out chemical equations and connecting the dots, but I was doing it with like French butter and using fats and solids. It was really funny. It was all like a science experiment for me, but with food.
So in watching the show as a non-chef, whenever they would come back and ask you what the THC content in each of the dishes are, I'm calling BS, especially when it came to using flour. How accurate is that that count in knowing when you eat?
So the flour that I had used, it was can of flour. That's something that I use for aroma. And when you talk about the aroma of a cannabis plant, we're talking essentially from a chef's perspective about its terpene value. And the terpene value, simply from a chef's perspective, is, it's like explaining rosemary. What does rosemary taste like, smell like? When you rub it between your fingers and those oils activate that plant, what does that residual smell like on your fingers afterwards? Those beautiful essences that left behind on your fingers are what I was going for with the cannabis flour. So I ground down the flour itself, added it to flour, like all-purpose flour, and I was using it for the aroma. What I ended up adding into it, it was going to cook off, but I added in an actual oil or a tincture. At this point, I'd have to go back and remind myself to get the proper dosing in there. And we did each dose, or I did each dosing separately. So I knew that this was getting that dose, this was getting that dose. And we had done the math all throughout. I think that's why I felt like I was, trying to herd cats, was you were juggling so many components. You have to figure the CBD, the THC, you have to remember the recipe. So it really had to all come together in one.
Well, I can only imagine. I mean, cooking shows look tough enough as it is, just with the time and getting things together, but now you're also making it a chemistry project. Although I think cooking really is, especially baking. So let me ask you this, because I think that this is one of the biggest fears, especially when it comes to edibles, is because dosing can be so varied and different products is going to affect you differently. What have you ever been scared with the reaction that it would have on people, as far as where they actually become, paranoid or nervous consuming the THC?
To allow myself to feel that fear of others, I would probably not be doing what I was doing. So you have to go with confidence in what you're doing, meaning I sit and plan dinners that I do with the mathematics, with the chemistry for weeks before I do that. I also make sure people understand you need to start low and go slow, which means if you've never done this before, you need to understand your body, take care of yourself. And I explain what that means, and so on and so forth. And so I try and cover all my bases and then some, but the only consistency with cannabis are inconsistencies. You have to plan for the unexpected. That's the same way a professional kitchen is going to work. Something's always going to happen. You need to be ready for that. So with that being said, I don't fear I educate. And there's a big difference between the two. And I always want to find people's comfort zones. Look, if you're scared, I get it. I am not going to judge you. You do this on your own time. Here's possibly how I can help you get the products that might help you if you're still interested. I am never going to be pushy. I'm never going to push this on somebody, but I will be there to help educate.
Well, Melissa, in watching your show, I know you got rushed and stressed out. I can promise you, when we come to Las Vegas to have you cook for us, there's going to be no rush, there's going to be no stress, and we just want really good food, even if it takes a little while longer. Dr. Shaw, what do you think about cooking with cannabis?
Well, we could do an entire show on this. Hopefully, we will continue to revisit this topic. Just some kind of initial points. First of all, I love to cook, and so I certainly wouldn't consider myself a chef, but I am intrigued by the culinary process and those that take it to the level that chefs do, especially when you're going to start incorporating potential therapeutic, medicinals into it. With respect to worrying about the dose, I would say when you're talking about THC, maybe some of the other cannabinoids like CBN, that might be an issue. Where you could develop, related effects of too much THC, just like you would have from other delivery methods. When it comes to CBD, however, I don't think there's too much to be concerned about. There was a publication done October of 2018 where they actually did tolerability studies. It's a randomized controlled trial, and they dosed these individuals with increasing amounts of CBD isolate to determine if there was really a point where you're starting to see some kind of adverse effects. And quite honestly, with very high doses of CBD, there were no adverse effects. You also want to consider the concept of bioavailability, which depending on the route of administration, like if it's IV, for example, it's close to 100%, but when it's being absorbed through the gut, it's CBD's between 5 and 10%. So you also want to back calculate at that respect, because, if you're putting in 10 milligrams of something orally, you're getting a minimal amount of that into your actual system. So that's kind of my initial thoughts. I think it's a fantastic thing that's going on, and I look forward to discussing and hearing more about it.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to more cooked with cannabis type episodes and learning about that. I'm getting hungry and my stomach's growling thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready. I'm definitely ready. We'll put that on the calendar.
Absolutely. Okay, Melissa, we are going to go off to a commercial break. I really thank you for being on and look forward to continuing the conversation and look forward to following you in your career. It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Hello, coming to you from the outdoors where I do my heat training, and I did my repeats on the hills. It's actually pretty empty, but it's kind of close to 90 degrees. So that's when I squeeze in whatever I can, but I'm actually here to share what Simply Start, Simply Satisfied is. So this organic hemp oil, this is the serum Simply Start, and you can take it twice a day or once. I already took both of them in this morning, so now it's lunchtime. Real quick and easy, yummy, delicious, 30 calories. The other one is Simply Satisfy. So it's a spray and also 3 sprays. You could do it once a day or twice a day. Again, I did it this morning. I'm doing it now at lunch. It helps you take care of your health and wellness. So learn more about them. Remember, 3 simple changes on how you can incorporate into your life. You can learn more at the link below. So stay safe and keep moving, keep training, and take care of your spirit, mind, and body.
And welcome back once again. It's my pleasure to introduce our next guest. We have Andy Ross and Brett Lafferty of American Rebel. So Andy is a singer and songwriter and self-defense advocate. He founded the Digital Ally in 2004. He served for the host of his own television show, so you're going to have to show us some of what you do, Maximum Archery and American Rebel for 12 years. He bow hunted all over the world and featured his love of self-defense, firearms, and tactical skills, as well as music there. Brett Lafferty was a regional sales manager for Liberty Sales, Safe prior to joining American Rebel in 2019. He's expanded the territory responsible for sales in Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And Brett has been instrumental in the launch of the cannabis industry's first inventory control safe with American Rebel. So that is called the AR-INV. We want to hear more about this, and so tell us a little bit about the founding of American Rebel.
Well, thank you very much for having me. As you mentioned, I have called American Rebel. It became a patriotic anthem, and also landed me on Counting Cars on the History Channel, where Danny built me the Second Amendment muscle car. And so the song had a lot of legs, got a lot of traction. And my manager, Doug Grau, came to me and he said, Andy, you know, with your entrepreneurial background, your ability to design products, put out products, get products manufactured, distributed, and sold, why don't we monetize the music by creating a brand? And we did, and there was really only one name for the company. We just rode the coattails of the song American Rebel, and American Rebel, the company, was born. We started off manufacturing concealed carry products, concealed carry backpacks, jackets, handbags, products that allowed people who made the decision to carry a firearm to be able to do it in a safe and effective way. And then, yeah, as we mentioned here, Brett and the team, they had a safe company in town that they were working for. They had built that branch of that safe company to a very impressive number. That company got bought and then eventually moved out of my home state. So my good friend Nate and Brett came to me and said, you know, how would American Rebel, we'd like to help put you in the safe business, and let's team up. So the guys all came on board. We developed our line of products, our safe products, which were for the sporting good industry, the firearm industry, the shooting sports, and which I had a large, you know, background in. I've been on TV in the hunting world, the sporting world for 10 years, and the music and all that I've done. So they had the background in the business side of it. And then, you know, Brett's really one of the guys that started digging around in this cannabis space, started getting some requests for us to modify our current safe line into what would be an inventory safe. And, you know, I'd have to give him all the credit for spearheading that. They came to me and said, we think there's a whole nother market over here for our vault doors and our safes if we just make some modifications, adjustments, and you know, make a great product for the cannabis industry. And it took me about 2 minutes. I said, you know, run that trap and let's see what happens. And the guys have hit an absolute home run with it. So I've got to give Nate and Jordan, Brett and Steve and Caleb and the guys at they're at American Rebel in Kansas City the credit for this. It's been a great product branch for our company, and it's created to our growth. It's allowed us to actually take the company public and become a publicly traded company.
That's fantastic. As a fellow entrepreneur, I'm always impressed by people that are taking an existing model and an existing brand and going out and modifying it to fit a new industry and in a new niche. So tell us about the experience and the what went into the inventory control safe, what went into its design, and I guess that just happened because people came to you guys.
I'll tell you what, I'll hand that over to Brett because they deserve all the credit. That got in the middle of it and take it away, Brett.
Yeah, so basically we kept having customers come to us and they were modifying our gun safes to fit into their dispensaries or grows or anything in the cannabis industry. So, and coming from Liberty Safe, I'd seen this for years. So I knew there was a niche out there that no other safe companies were really going after. So we jumped on a plane. We flew out to Colorado. We met with one of our customers out there, and he took us around to multiple dispensaries that they ran, a couple of grows, distribution center, and we just sat down and talked to people at each location and got feedback on what they wanted in a safe for their different, for the grows, for the dispensaries, for everything like that. So we just came back. Took all their recommendations and we set down the inventory control safe that we now have today.
So, number one, I love the hat. That's great. But so what does an installation look like? If a dispensary decides to bring your safes in, what it goes into that, and how, and what would they expect?
Yeah, so that's one of the hard things with 1,000-pound safe. But we've simplified that process so we could deliver safes anywhere in the country. We use professional installers all over the country. So they would come in, they would remove an old safe that might be in the way or broken. We could get that out of the way, install our brand new safes in there, bolt them down, hook them up. We could do anything that needs to be done as far as getting it hooked up to their security systems or whatever needs to be done.
Dr. Shaw, going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think this is a great service. I love the name. It dovetails with me. I think it has a lot of potential in the future. I can say medically speaking that as this moves forward, you're going to have a lot more medicinal use of this. Let's say whether the DEA starts to create certain kind of classifications, like I'm in the addiction world, and so opiate treatment programs are highly regulated, have to have these enormous safes to store the Schedule 2 and 3 medications. I see this as a great play to already be established, and then in the future try to capture the medical market too.
I'm curious because I know that right now dispensaries, it is primarily a cash business. So I know that can bring in an element of, a criminal element, unfortunately. So I can see safes as being very important. But how does that play into insurance? I mean, is there a benefit as far as insurance contracts with having one of your safes?
Yeah, so basically, the insurance companies make it a little bit easier on us. I touched on it a little bit earlier. Every state's a little bit different on what they require as far as storing their products. But insurance companies have kind of made a guideline that is easier for us to follow. And then it allows, once the safe comes into their dispensary and is bolted down, then it becomes part of their property and they could actually have it insured at that point.
That's fantastic.
Well, Andy and Brett, thank you for joining us. Viewers, if you would like to contact either Melissa or Andy and Brett, you can go to our website at thebuddingreport.com and get links and contact information for all of our guests and watch past episodes and find out what's coming, sign up to get news and information so you can stay up with what we're doing. But again, thank you all for joining us. Next week, we have criminal defense attorney Chris Perry of the Perry Law Firm. We're going to be talking about he's a criminal defense attorney, and we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about the Texas law change, which is basically made smokable hemp illegal. And we have Grace Delgado of the Texas CBD blog. So it'll be interesting to have them both on and get their views on the Texas law change. So thank you for joining us for the Budding Report, and we'll see you next week.